The dark night of the soul, a term that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who has experienced it. But what did Carl Jung, the great explorer of the psyche, really understand about this profound spiritual crisis? Today, we're going to dive deep into Jung's perspective on what he called the night sea journey, that terrible darkness that precedes transformation. You know that feeling when everything you once believed about yourself, about life, about meaning, suddenly crumbles? When you find yourself in an abyss so deep that no light seems to penetrate? Jung didn't just study this experience, he lived it. After his break with Freud in 1913, he entered his own dark night that lasted nearly 6 years. During this period, he wrote in his red book, "My soul, where are you? Do you hear me? I speak, I call you. Are you there? I have returned, I am here again." Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that total disconnect from your own soul? That sense that everything meaningful has been stripped away, leaving you in a void of confusion and despair? If you have, you're not alone. Jung believed this experience, though terrifying, was actually a crucial part of psychological and spiritual development. He called it the night sea journey, a descent into the unconscious that, while painful, carries the seeds of profound transformation. Think of it like this. Just as a seed must be buried in dark soil before it can sprout toward the light, our consciousness sometimes needs to be plunged into darkness before real growth can occur. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And that's exactly what the dark night forces us to do, face our souls in their naked truth. But here's what's fascinating about Jung's perspective. He didn't see the dark night as just a period of suffering. He saw it as an initiation. In ancient mystery schools, initiates would be led through dark underground chambers before emerging into the light of higher wisdom. Jung believed our psyche naturally creates similar initiatory experiences. When everything falls apart, when meaning drains from our life, when we feel utterly lost, that's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough in disguise. You might be wondering, how can such profound suffering be positive? Jung would say it's because the dark night strips away our false self, what he called the persona. It's like being skinned alive psychologically. Everything you thought you were, everything you identified with, everything that gave you a sense of security, it all gets torn away, and yes, it's excruciating. But Jung saw this as necessary surgery performed by the psyche itself. Let me share something personal with you. When I first encountered Jung's writings on the dark night, I was going through my own period of intense psychological suffering. Everything that had given my life meaning had dissolved. I felt like I was dying inside. But reading Jung's perspective helped me understand that this wasn't just meaningless pain. It was a transformation in progress. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The dark night is precisely this process. The unconscious forcing itself into consciousness. It's as if the deeper parts of ourselves, tired of being ignored, finally rebel. They pull us down into the depths where we must face what we've been avoiding. Jung believed this was actually an act of love from our psyche. Tough love, perhaps, but love nonetheless. Think about a time when you've gone through intense suffering that later led to growth. Remember how impossible it felt while you were in it? how you couldn't see any purpose to the pain. Yet looking back, you can see how that experience transformed you. That's exactly what Jung observed about the dark night. It's excruciating while you're in it, but it serves a profound purpose in our psychological and spiritual development. Jung identified several key characteristics of the dark night experience. First, there's the loss of meaning. Everything that once made sense suddenly doesn't. Your beliefs, your values, your understanding of yourself and the world, it all comes into question. This isn't just doubt. It's a complete collapse of meaning structures, and it's terrifying. Second, there's the feeling of abandonment. Jung noted how people in the dark night often feel completely alone, cut off from others and from God or any sense of higher power. This mirrors the experience of Christ on the cross crying out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" It's a necessary part of the journey. We must face our ultimate aloneness before we can discover true connection. Third, there's the confrontation with the shadow. In the darkness, all our repressed material comes rushing up to meet us. Our fears, our shame, our denied aspects. Everything we've pushed into the unconscious demands to be seen. Jung believed this was crucial. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. But here's what's vital to understand, and what Jung emphasized repeatedly. The dark night isn't punishment. It's not a sign that you've done something wrong or that you're being abandoned by the divine. It's actually a sign that your psyche is trying to heal itself, to become more whole. It's like a fever. Uncomfortable, yes, but part of the healing process. Jung wrote extensively about what he called the self, not our ego self, but the larger, more complete self that includes both conscious and unconscious elements. He believed the dark night was often initiated by this self to bring about greater wholeness. It's as if our deeper wisdom knows we need this experience, even though our conscious mind rebels against it. You might be experiencing this right now. Perhaps you're in the midst of your own dark night, feeling lost, confused, desperate for some light. If so, Jung would encourage you to resist the urge to escape the darkness. Instead, he would suggest doing something counterintuitive, going deeper into it. As he wrote, "In all chaos there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." This doesn't mean wallowing in suffering. Rather, it means paying attention to what the darkness might be trying to teach you. What parts of yourself have you been avoiding? What truths have you been unwilling to face? What aspects of your life need to die so something new can be born? Jung believed that the dark night often comes when we've been living too one-sidedly, perhaps too focused on the external world while neglecting our inner life, or too identified with our rational mind while ignoring our emotions and intuition. The darkness forces us to develop our neglected aspects to become more whole. Here's another crucial point Jung made about the dark night. It's not just personal. Yes, it feels intensely personal when we're going through it, but Jung saw it as connecting us to what he called the collective unconscious. Our individual suffering links us to the universal human experience of transformation through darkness. We're participating in an ancient pattern of death and rebirth that exists in all cultures and religions. Think about all the mythological heroes who had to descend into the underworld before they could fulfill their destiny. Think about the ancient mystery traditions where initiates had to pass through darkness before reaching enlightenment. Jung saw the dark night as our personal version of these universal patterns. We're not just suffering randomly, we're participating in a profound archetypal experience. But let me be clear about something. Understanding all this doesn't make the dark night easier. Jung wasn't offering a way to bypass the suffering. Instead, he was providing a framework for finding meaning in it. As he said, man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health. The dark night is difficult by design. That's what makes it transformative. So what happens when we fully embrace the dark night? Jung observed that something remarkable occurs, a kind of alchemical transformation. Just as medieval alchemists believed they could turn lead into gold, the psyche can transform our darkest experiences into wisdom and growth. But this only happens if we're willing to stay with the process, to resist the urge to prematurely escape the darkness. You might be wondering, how long does this process take? Unfortunately, there's no standard timeline. Jung's own dark night lasted 6 years. For others, it might be shorter or longer. The key isn't the duration, but the depth of the transformation. As Jung noted, there is no birth of consciousness without pain. But here's something hopeful. Jung observed that the dark night often contains its own light, hidden at first but gradually revealing itself. He wrote about how symbols and dreams during this period often contain guidance if we learn to pay attention. The unconscious isn't just creating chaos, it's trying to lead us toward greater wholeness. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of active imagination and working with dreams during the dark night. These practices help us dialogue with the unconscious, understanding what it's trying to communicate through our suffering. Sometimes, the smallest symbol or dream image can provide crucial guidance when we feel most lost. Let me share something else Jung discovered. The dark night often comes in cycles. Just when you think you're through it, another layer might emerge. But each cycle tends to be less devastating than the last, because you begin to recognize the pattern. You learn to trust that light will return, even when everything seems darkest. Think of it like diving into deep water. The first time is terrifying because you don't know what to expect. But as you become more familiar with the depths, you develop a different relationship with them. You learn to move through them with more grace, even though they're still challenging. Jung also noted something fascinating about people who've been through the dark night. They often develop an unusual kind of strength and wisdom, not the brittle strength of ego, but something deeper and more authentic. They become what he called wounded healers, people who can help others precisely because they've faced their own darkness. You see, the dark night changes us fundamentally. We emerge with a different relationship to life, to ourselves, to suffering. We no longer need everything to make sense or feel good. We develop what Jung called a more spacious personality, one that can hold both light and dark, joy and sorrow, certainty and mystery. As we approach the end of our exploration, let me ask you something. What if your current darkness isn't your enemy, but your initiator? What if the very experiences that seem to be breaking you are actually breaking you open? Jung would encourage you to consider this possibility, not as a way to bypass your pain, but as a way to find meaning within it. Remember, the dark night isn't about becoming perfect or achieving some idealized state. It's about becoming more real, more whole, more authentically yourself. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Sometimes that privilege comes wrapped in darkness. You who are listening, whether you're in the depths of your dark night, emerging from one, or sensing one approaching, know that you're not alone. You're participating in an ancient and profound process of transformation. Your suffering isn't meaningless, even when it feels that way. You're not lost, even when all your maps have failed. As Jung wrote in his Red Book, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The dark night is ultimately about this awakening. Painful, yes, but precious beyond measure. Trust the process. Trust your psyche. Trust that the darkness, however deep, is not the end of your story, but the beginning of a new chapter in your becoming. You've always been more than you thought you were. The dark night strips away everything that isn't truly you, so what remains can finally shine, and that light, when it emerges, will be your own, not borrowed, not imitated, but authentically, powerfully yours. Let's delve even deeper into how Jung understood the stages of the dark night, because this knowledge can be incredibly helpful when you're in the midst of it. He identified several distinct phases that most people experience, though not always in a linear order. The first phase he called the separation. This is when you begin to feel disconnected from your old life, your old self, your old beliefs. It's as if you're being pulled away from everything familiar. Many people try to fight this separation, desperately clinging to what they know. But Jung observed that this only prolongs the suffering. The separation is necessary. It creates the space for something new to emerge. Think about how a snake must feel when it's shedding its skin. There's no comfortable way to do it. The old skin must become uncomfortable enough that the snake is willing to scrape against rough surfaces to remove it. Our psychological transformations often work the same way. We need to become uncomfortable enough with our old ways of being that we're willing to endure the pain of change. The second phase Jung identified was the descent. This is where you actually enter the darkness. Your normal sources of meaning and comfort no longer work. You might feel like you're falling with nothing to hold on to. This phase can be particularly frightening because it often comes with what Jung called the loss of soul, a feeling of being completely cut off from your essence, your vitality, your connection to life itself. But here's something fascinating Jung noticed. This descent, though terrifying, often comes with unusual dreams and synchronicities. It's as if the unconscious is trying to communicate with us more directly now that our normal channels are disrupted. Pay attention to your dreams during this time. They often contain crucial guidance, even if you don't understand them immediately. The third phase Jung called the night sea journey. This is where you're fully in the darkness, swimming in unknown waters. It's like being in the belly of the whale, like Jonah in the biblical story. Everything is strange, uncomfortable, disorienting, but Jung saw this as a crucial phase of transformation. In the darkness, away from all distractions, we finally face ourselves. You might be experiencing this right now. That feeling of being swallowed by darkness, lost in unknown territory. If so, remember Jung's words. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. The darkness isn't random. It has a purpose, even if we can't see it yet. The fourth phase he identified was the confrontation with the shadow. This is often the most challenging part of the dark night. All our repressed material, our fears, shame, denied aspects, comes rushing up to meet us. It's like being forced to look in a mirror that shows everything we've been trying not to see about ourselves. But Jung was very clear about something. Confronting the shadow isn't about becoming perfect or eliminating our dark aspects. It's about integration. As he wrote, "How can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow?" The goal isn't to become all light, but to become whole, which means accepting and integrating all parts of ourselves. Then comes what Jung called the alchemical phase. This is where the real transformation begins to happen. Just as alchemists believed they could turn lead into gold, our psyche begins to transform our suffering into wisdom. But this transformation can't be forced or rushed. It happens in its own time, in the darkness, like a seed germinating underground. You see, Jung understood something profound about human transformation. It follows natural laws, just like physical processes do. You can't make a seed grow faster by pulling on it. You can only provide the right conditions: soil, water, darkness, and trust the process. The same is true for psychological transformation. Let me share something else Jung discovered about the dark night. It often comes with physical symptoms. You might experience unusual fatigue, disrupted sleep patterns, changes in appetite, or unexplained body aches. This is because psyche and soma, mind and body, are intimately connected. When we're going through deep psychological transformation, our bodies often reflect this. But here's what's crucial to understand. These symptoms aren't necessarily something to fix. They're often part of the transformation process itself. Just as a fever can be part of healing, these physical manifestations can be part of your psyche's attempt to transform itself. Jung also noticed something interesting about relationships during the dark night. Often, people find that some relationships naturally fall away while others deepen. Some people might not understand what you're going through and drift away. Others might be drawn closer, recognizing something authentic in your struggle. This is natural and necessary, part of the reorganization of your life around a more authentic center. You might be experiencing this right now, feeling lonely, misunderstood, unable to explain to others what you're going through. Remember, this too is part of the process. As Jung said, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. But here's something hopeful. Jung observed that people going through the dark night often find each other forming what he called spiritual kinship. There's a recognition that happens between people who have faced the darkness. They don't need many words to understand each other. They know the territory. As we move toward the completion of this journey, let's talk about what Jung observed about the emergence from the dark night. He noticed that it rarely happens suddenly or dramatically. More often, it's like a gradual dawn. The light returns so slowly, you barely notice it at first. You might start having moments of unexpected peace, brief glimpses of meaning or purpose. These moments might be fleeting at first, but they gradually become more frequent. It's like your eyes adjusting to the light after being in darkness. It needs to happen gradually. Jung emphasized something important about this emergence. You don't come out the same person who went in. The dark night fundamentally transforms us. We develop what he called a tragic consciousness, not in the sense of being sad, but in the sense of being able to hold the full complexity of life, both its light and shadow aspects. You develop a different relationship with uncertainty, with suffering, with joy. You no longer need everything to make sense or feel good all the time. You develop what Jung called the tension of opposites, the ability to hold contradictory truths without needing to resolve them. This is real wisdom, not the kind you get from books or teachers, but the kind that comes from facing your own darkness and emerging transformed. As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So if you're in your dark night right now, take heart. You're not lost, you're not broken, you're not doing anything wrong. You're in a profound process of transformation. Trust it. Trust yourself. Trust the wisdom of your psyche to lead you through this darkness toward a more authentic light. Remember, the dark night isn't punishment. It's initiation. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's not about escaping darkness. It's about integrating it into a larger understanding of what it means to be human. You who are listening, whether you're just entering your dark night, deep in its midst, or beginning to emerge, know that you're part of an ancient and noble tradition of souls who have faced the darkness and been transformed by it. Your suffering isn't meaningless. Your confusion isn't failure. Your darkness isn't the end of your story. As Jung wrote in his final years, the world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you. The dark night strips away all the ways the world has told you who you are, so you can finally discover your own truth. And that truth, when it emerges, will have been worth every step through the darkness. You are becoming who you truly are. And that becoming, though painful, is the greatest adventure of your life. Trust the process. Trust your soul. Trust that the light will return, not because you've escaped the darkness, but because you've learned to see in the dark. Let me share one final insight from Jung about what happens after we emerge from the dark night. He noticed that people who have been through this journey develop what he called a wounded wisdom. It's not the kind of wisdom that sets you apart from others or makes you feel superior. Instead, it's a wisdom that connects you more deeply to the human experience, to the universal journey of the soul. You begin to recognize the dark night in others' eyes. You can sit with them in their suffering without trying to fix it or make it go away. You understand that sometimes the most healing thing we can do is simply witness another's journey through the darkness, holding space for their transformation, just as others perhaps held space for yours. Jung observed that people who have emerged from the dark night often develop an unusual kind of strength, not the brittle strength of the ego that needs to prove itself, but a quiet strength that comes from having faced your deepest fears and survived. You no longer need to pretend to be more than you are, but you also no longer accept being less than you are. This is what Jung called the treasure hard to attain. The dark night strips away everything false, everything borrowed, everything that isn't truly yours. What remains is authentic, hard-won, and uniquely yours. Your light, when it returns, isn't a reflection of someone else's sun. It's your own inner fire, tempered by darkness, strengthened by trial. You might be wondering, does the dark night ever completely end? Jung's answer might surprise you. He observed that Once you've been through this journey, you develop a different relationship with darkness. You no longer fear it as you once did. You understand it as part of the natural rhythm of psychological and spiritual growth. Future challenges might come, future periods of darkness might arise, but you face them differently now. You've developed what Jung called the ability to hold the tension of opposites. You can experience darkness without being consumed by it, face uncertainty without needing to control it, feel pain without being broken by it. This is real maturity, not the kind that comes with age, but the kind that comes from facing your depths and emerging transformed. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Through the dark night, you've made the unconscious conscious. You've faced what was hidden. You've integrated what was separated. Let me leave you with one final thought from Jung about the ultimate purpose of the dark night. He believed it wasn't just about individual transformation. It was about contributing to the evolution of human consciousness itself. Each person who goes through this journey and emerges transformed adds something essential to our collective understanding of what it means to be human. Your dark night, your suffering, your transformation. It's not just for you. It's part of the larger story of human awakening. As Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Through the dark night, you're not just discovering who you are, you're contributing to our understanding of who we all are. So if you're in the darkness now, know that you're not just suffering, you're pioneering. You're part of an ancient lineage of souls who have faced the darkness and been transformed by it. Your journey matters not just for you, but for all of us. Remember, the dark night isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your true story. Everything before was preparation. Everything after will be revelation. You are becoming who you were always meant to be, not despite the darkness, but because of it. Trust the process. Trust your soul. Trust that the light will return, not because you've escaped the darkness, but because you've learned to find the light within it. You are more than you know, stronger than you believe, and wiser than you realize. The dark night is showing you this truth, one shadow at a time. You've always been the one you've been waiting for. Now, finally, you're discovering this truth in the depths of your own being, and that discovery, though it comes through darkness, will light your way home to yourself.